Hello, grade 12s. Welcome back to the channel, Science Therapy, hosted by the one and only science therapist, Uabutiwa Sos Ugobela Maths. And without any further ado, let's look at these questions that we have here. Okay, so we have question 6 and we are still on analytical geometry. It says the line LP with equation y plus x minus 2 is equals to 0 is a tangent at L to the second with center M is to negative 4 is to 4. Ln is the diameter of the circle. Also LP is parallel to NQ. So as we can see here, these are two parallel lines where P lies on the x-axis and Q lies on the y-axis. But then also the other thing that we know is that if this is a diameter here, it must be perpendicular to these two tangents here. So we can see that LP is a tangent and also NQ is a tangent. So that means Ln as a diameter here must be perpendicular to NQ and also must be perpendicular to LP, right? Then 6.1, it's saying determine the equation of the diameter Ln, which from the fact that we have deduced that Ln must be perpendicular to LP, we can start by rearranging the formula of LP and make y the subject of the formula. So to answer 6.1, we're going to start by saying the equation of LP, that's y is equals to negative x plus 2. And then from here, we find that the gradient of LP has to be represented by the coefficient of x here, which is negative 1. But if we are saying that LP is perpendicular to Ln, since we know that the diameter must be perpendicular to the tangent, or you can say the radius must be perpendicular to the tangent, then we know that the gradient of Ln must be positive 1. Because remember, if we multiply the gradient of two perpendicular lines, we must get negative 1. So if we take the gradient of LP multiplied by the gradient of Ln, when we multiply the two, it should give us negative 1. So if this is negative 1, that means the gradient of Ln should be positive 1. So it should be a positive reciprocal number, right? So now that we've found that our gradient is Ln, remember, in order to find the equation of a line, you only need the gradient and the set of coordinates. Now from the line Ln, we can see a collinear point there, which happens to be the midpoint or the center of the circle, which is coordinate M. So M has coordinates negative 4 is to 4. So we can just use the formula for the equation of the straight line and just find the equation of diameter Ln. So this is y minus our y1 should be the positive 4, and then we have our gradient as 1, then we have x, but then our x value is negative 4. That means negative and negative will be positive 4 here, and then to calculate our equation, that's 1 times x is x, 1 times 4, that's 4, and then if we transpose this negative 4 over, that's plus 4 here. So this is y is equals to x plus 8, right? And then we have our equation just like that. So, okay, for 3 marks, that's how we were supposed to determine the diameter Ln, right? Then let's proceed. 6.2 says calculate the coordinates of L, right? Now, how do we figure out the coordinates of L? Looking at L, we can see that L there is a point of intersection between diameter Ln and tangent LP, right? So this is a point of intersection there. So we can, to find the point of intersection, we know mathematically, we just have to take the equation of LP and equate it to the equation of Ln. So we already have the equation of Ln. Remember, we did calculate it in 6.1. It was x plus 8. And then also, again, we did rearrange to find the the equation of ln, or of LP, meant to say, which was this one. We rearranged it to be negative x plus 2. Now, when we equate the two equations, we know that we're going to find the point of contact there, or the point of intersection. So this negative x, let it come over to this side. That will be x plus x. And then we are left with the 2, but the 8, let it jump over to the right-hand side. And then x plus x, that's 2x. 2 minus 8, that's negative 6. So if we divide both sides by 2, our x is equals to negative 3, right? And then remember, we are looking for the coordinate. So we only have the x value now. That x value, we can choose to substitute it in the equation of ln, or substitute it in the equation of LP, our choice. But we do understand that wherever we substitute it, we should get the same answer, because we are saying those two equations at that particular point L produces the same set of coordinates. So we can say our y is equals to x plus 8, and then in the position of x, let's substitute negative 3. So I'm choosing to substitute in the equation of ln. But then again, you can choose to substitute in the equation of LP. It should still produce the same value. So my y value here for L becomes 5, right? So that means the coordinates for L are negative 3 is to positive 5. And considering where L is on the Cartesian plane, it does make perfect sense that the coordinates are negative 3 is to positive 5. Right. So when you look at your diagram from your analytical geometry, even your answers should make sense, right? So the diagrams are not really drawn to scale, but then in terms of finding your coordinates and looking at the Cartesian plane, it should make sense, right? Then, okay, now let's proceed. 6.3, it says determine the equation of the circle. So we know the formula for the equation of the circle, or the format, is x minus a, and then square plus y minus b square is equals to r squared. So we know that a and b represents the coordinates of the center, right, of the circle. So the center of the circle, we can see that it is M here. So we are even told to the circle with center M. So M is the center. It's not an assumption. We are even told in the statement, right? But then remember, we have already calculated the coordinates of L. They were negative 3 is to 5. So we can use these coordinates to find the value of r squared by saying where there is x, let's substitute the negative 3. And then the a and b are for the coordinates of the center. So our a value here will be represented by the negative 4, which means if we have negative and this negative here, we're going to end up having positive 4 square here. Then here we have the y. The y value is this 5 from coordinate L. And then the value of b should be the y value of the center. So that's minus 4 square, like that. And then is equals to r squared. Now, when you punch all this into your calculator, you should get 2. So 2 is equals to r squared. So that means our r squared is equals to 2. Now, having to write the equation, now we're just going to substitute the values of a, b, and r squared. So that means we have x, and then plus 4 square plus y minus 4, and then bracket square, and then is equals to 2. So this should be the way in which you write the equation of the circle. So always in this format, you should always write your equation of the circle in the format x minus a squared plus y minus b squared is equals to r squared. Now we can say our r squared is 2, our b is that 4 there, and then our a is that negative 4. Hence we have positive here because it's negative 4. Right. Then let's now proceed. We have 6.4. It says write down the coordinates of n. So write down the coordinates of n for 3 marks. So let's determine the coordinates of n. Now remember, we have our values there. It's negative 3 is to 5. Now what we can do, we can say that we do have the midpoint here, and then we are looking for n but then we do know that M here is the midpoint of line LN. So what we can do now is that we do have the center, or we do have the midpoint, but then we are looking for the other coordinates. If it is in that case, you can still use the midpoint formula, but then the way in which you use the midpoint formula now will be separated in the form that you will say, okay, let's consider the x coordinate of M, and then let's separate this to x1 plus x2 over 2. And then let's consider the y value of M, and then let's separate it to y1 plus y2 over 2. Right. So in the x of M, we substitute the x coordinate of the midpoint, which is -4. And then we do it as if we were calculating the x coordinate of the midpoint. So we would have to say this -3 plus the values of n. Remember, the coordinates of n are just x's to y because we don't have any coordinates there. So for x2, we just substitute x and then over 2. Then over to this side, our y value for the midpoint is +4. But then here we will have 5 from the L here. And then we don't have the y coordinate of n, so we're just going to say y. And then over 2. Then we kind of just calculate it side by side like that, so that we find the coordinates of n. So -4 times 2, that's -8. And then -3 plus x. Then even this side, 4 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 4, that's +8, and then 5 plus y, like this. Then if we take -8 and then transpose the -3 here, it will be positive. And then this side, if we have 8 minus 5, like that. So the x coordinate here is -5, but the y coordinate here is +3. So that means the coordinates of n are -5 is to +3, right? So that's how you find the coordinates of n. So that's how you would find the coordinates of n. So we can say that we use the midpoint, but then because we already had the coordinates of the midpoint, now we have to separate the midpoint of the x values and the midpoint of the y values, and just calculate the values of n there. So make sure that you also understand this way of calculating here, right? So they like this type of questions in your exam, right? So 6.5 says write down the equation of NQ. So equation of NQ. So let's not forget that we now already have the coordinates here. But then going back to the statement, they told us that LP is parallel to NQ. So we know that if LP is parallel to NQ, then they should have the same gradient, right? So parallel lines have equal gradients. So that means the gradient of LP should be equal to the gradient of NQ. But then remember, the gradient of LP, from rearranging this formula here to y is equals to -x plus 2, we found that the gradient is -1. So that means also the gradient of NQ is -1 as well. Right. So that means now we can determine the equation, because to determine the equation, remember, we need the gradient and the set of coordinates. Now, this is our gradient, and the set of coordinates that we are going to use are the coordinates for n. So we're going to have y minus y1 is equals to m x minus x1. Right. So this is y minus 3 is equals to -1, and then x, here we have the -5 and then the minus from here, so it's going to be +5, right? So this is y is equals to -x minus 5, then +3. So this is y is equals to -x, -5 plus 3, that's a -2, right? So we have our equation as -x minus 2, right? So it's not the same as this one. It was almost the same. So, but then here this is -x minus 2. So it's not that when they are parallel, they should have the same equation. Remember, they only have the same gradient. So it makes sense that here it's -2, because remember, this value here is indicating the y-intercept. So that means at that point, the Q, it's intersecting at -2, and then about the line LP where it is intersecting here, it is +2. So you see the difference in these two equations, right? So 6.6, now an interesting question there. It says if the length of the diameter is doubled, the what? The length of the diameter is doubled. Now, note that if the length of the diameter is doubled, that means also the radius is doubled. So remember, diameter is 2 multiplied by r. So if you choose to double the radius, that means you are also doubling this part here, right? So whatever you do on the left-hand side, you also do on the right or on the right-hand side. So that's 2d will be equals to 4r, right? So you do understand now that if you are doubling this, then you should also double the radius there, right? So 2 times the radius, that means now you have 4 times the radius, because now remember the diameter is twice the radius, right? So now let's figure out what they want us to write here. If the length of the diameter is doubled and the circle is translated horizontally 6 units to the right, write down the equation of the new circle. Write down the equation of the new circle. So now let's start with the old circle, the equation of the old circle or the original circle. That was x. Remember, we calculated it to be x plus 4 in 6.3, right? So where they asked us to determine the equation of the circle. So it was x plus 4 square and then plus y minus 4 square. And then this was our r square, which was 2, right? Now remember, if they're doubling the radius, so this, if they're doubling the diameter, they're doubling the radius. So this is r squared. R squared represents 2. But then note that this was happening in the old circle, right? Now in the new circle, so let's find the radius of the old circle first. That means the radius, because this is just r squared, the radius would have to be root 2. But then in the new circle, if we are doubling this, that means the new circle must have a radius of 2 times root 2, right? Which will give us 2 root 2. Now, if we are looking for r squared in that circle, obviously we must square both sides like this. And then our r squared, now if we say 2 root 2 square, this becomes 8. So that means our new r square will be equals to 8, right? So do not be confused and just go here and say, oh, we are doubling, and then you go, this should be equal to 2 to the exponent of 2. Again, note this. So the way in which you'd be doing that is just simply saying 4 multiplied by r. You would get this 8 if you were saying 4 multiplied by this 2 here, and then you'd get the 8 there. So, but then an easier way to do it is just to realize that for the new one, you need to say 2 multiplied by the old radius, then you get your 2 root 2. But then remember, in your equation of the circle, you are supposed to have r square. Now, how do you find the r square? You just square both sides and then it gives you 8. So if you punch this into your calculator, you will find that the r square now, remember, that's not representing the radius, it's representing the r square. The new radius is 2 root 2. Then the r square for that radius is 8. And then, okay, so for the new circle, that means this is what we are doing. Number 1, they're saying this is translated horizontally 6 units. Now, we do understand that 6 units to the right. We have already spoken about the horizontal shift. And with the horizontal shift, we said right means what? Minus, and then left means plus. So every time we are dealing with the horizontal shift, we must understand this thing. If they're saying right, that means we will subtract that particular number. But if they're saying left, that means we have to add that particular number. So that means we will have x plus 4. But then since they say it is being shifted 6 units to the right, I will come here and say x plus 4 minus 6. Then close the bracket square. So they're not doing anything to the horizontal movement of the circle. So this remains the way it is, y minus 4, because they're not shifting this circle horizontally. So that still remains like that. But then remember here, we have figured out that the new radius was 2 root 2, which we need to square that, right? Because here we are supposed to have r square. according to the format x minus a square plus y minus b square is equals to r square. So our new radius is 2 root 2, and then we square that radius. Now from here, we'll have the 4 minus 6, which is supposed to be negative 2. So x minus 2 square plus the y minus 4 square, and then here we have the 8. So the equation of the new cycle should be x minus 2 square plus y minus 4 square, and then equal to 8. So make sure that you play the video as many times as possible and just try to understand the approach that I took into solving this question here. So a lot of mistakes were done while solving this question. So please note that thing when it comes to the radius there, the fact that when you double the diameter, also the radius must double. But then you don't double the r squared, you double the radius. And then from doubling the radius, that's when you're going to square. Right. So, okay, with all that being said, guys, please press the thumbs up button if you have enjoyed the lesson and then you found it helpful. And if you've been watching the videos and haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. But most importantly, please share the link with your friends and classmates so that they may also find assistance. Remember, do not be selfish. We are winning as a team.